So what we're going to talk about this morning is what is cloud accounting and what does that mean? Who are the main providers? Because I'm a trainer for QuickBooks, so I train accountants and bookkeepers in how to use QuickBooks software, but that doesn't mean I don't use other softwares, because I do. And there are lots of other softwares out there. So who are they? What do they do? And where do they sit in the hierarchy of software providers? What kind of features and functions should you expect within any piece of cloud-based accounting software before you pick it up, and how would you choose which one therefore you need, and how stable and secure are these pieces of software? Because that is one of the things that people say when they're reticent to use cloud-based software, is that, oh, well, it's not stable or it's not secure. So let's talk about that as well today. So the first thing, what is cloud accounting? Well, cloud accounting is a way of record keeping. And we're going to also look at what came before cloud accounting, what does cloud accounting mean, and what its benefits are within this section. So record keeping is a legal requirement. So most of you, I hope, will already know that you need to keep records, facts and evidence, HMRC like facts and evidence. So you need to keep records for the year that you're in, plus the previous 5 years. So people talk about 6 years of record keeping, that's what they mean for that. And those records can be kept digitally or in a hard copy format. And historically, we always kept a hard copy format. People would sometimes bob them in an Aldi carrier bag or a shoebox, or in a nice lever arch file and put them in date order or supplier order or whatever that might be. And that's absolutely wonderful. HMRC love to see that kind of thing. But I'm going to show you another way, a way that'll save you time and effort, and also mean that if you were to have, let's hope you never do, a fire or a flood, or if you were to move house and lose a box, or move offices and lose a box, then you will never lose your hard copy receipts, because we want to keep those forever. The rule with the 5 years plus the year that you're in, HMRC are actually allowed to go back 20 years if they think there's been any fraudulent activity. That doesn't mean that you're conducting fraudulent activity, but if HMRC suspect it, then they will ask to see records for 20 years. So another really good reason why we keep records is management information. For us as business owners, we need to know how our business is doing, where we're making money, what kind of profit we're making, what liabilities we've got in our business, who owes money to us, who we owe money to, what kind of tax liability we're going to have. So we need it for ourselves, but we also need it for third parties. So people like banks, if you're looking to get a loan, I know we've had a very interesting loan landscape in the more recent past, but in a normal world, if you're looking for a loan, then you would go to a bank or a commercial lender, and they're going to be looking for record keeping of the recent history and a projection using that into the future. So we need to keep records. And also you might have other interested parties. So these might be people who need to see your records because you're selling your business. You've grown it up to the point, you've got an exit strategy. You now want to go off and live in the Seychelles, drinking pina coladas. You've sold your business. Somebody's made you an offer you can't refuse. They're going to get somebody like me, an accountant, in to come in and do some due diligence and make sure that your business doesn't have any skeletons in the closet. And what they're going to do that is ask to see your records. Well, if you can just give them access into your cloud-based accounting system, then that, as long as those records are nice and tidy and complete, that's going to stop them from metaphorically kicking the tires and knocking the price down. So there's lots of really good reasons to keep good records, and cloud-based systems are the best way to keep those records. So what came before cloud systems? Well, there was the time when I started. I mean, I'm in my 50s now, so I've been doing accounting for a long time. And we were kind of moving away from ledger books, even when I started in accountancy 30 odd years ago. But they used to have these massive ledger books that just folded out and went on for it. And, you know, some accountants and bookkeepers, they used to love filling those things in with all of the different analysis columns and all the rest of it. Me, I was a spreadsheet girl. So I started work and started using spreadsheets from day one. And I used to love doing that kind of analysis on a spreadsheet. But whilst I consider myself to be a super user when it comes to spreadsheets, because I have been using them for an awful long time, and have developed skills over the years as things have changed within that software. I can still make mistakes. I can set a formula with a range within it that doesn't then capture the whole range that I need to add up. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong within spreadsheets where something might not work, a link might end up being broken. You then, therefore, end up with errors coming through from those spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are only as good as what you thought you were going to use them for. You can then possibly use them for a few different permutations of that over and above it. But the way that you lay out the information, the way that you set it up, that's kind of then the way that you've got it without a lot of intervention. The great thing about software is that it's almost like it's got a data warehouse. All of that information that you put in at the back, its reporting functionality then just plucks from it whatever it needs for a whole suite of reports and way of analysing your data, regardless of whether or not you thought you would want that right at the beginning. So for me, that is a massive advantage that it has over spreadsheets. So from spreadsheets, we moved the world, when we say we, the world moved to desktop software. So lots of fantastic software with great functionality, but it was the kind of thing that you received through the post on a disk and you put it onto your machine, and that's where it's at. On your machine, you might get updates for it, but people typically didn't. So they would buy a piece of software, never update it, keep it for as long as they possibly could. But it was always just on their machine, which was fine up to a point, and the functionality was great. But from an accountant's perspective, if you're using desktop software, typically you'd have to take a backup of that software. You'd have to send it to me. Often that's a huge file that might have to be put on a gig stick and sent through the post. I mean, now we've got lots of Dropbox functionality that can hold big files like that, but way back when we were using those kinds of things, that wasn't always available to us. But we'd get that backup, we'd then have to restore the backup, and now you can't do anything in your software because we've got it. You've passed the baton to us, we've got it. We then do our year-end accounts and then we give it back to you. And for a period of time, you've had your wings clipped, you've not been able to do anything in that software. Well, that's far from ideal. And so we've moved on from that, and we moved on to cloud-based software, which is live, interactive, accessible by anyone who you grant access to it. So I can have access to it at the same as you have to have access to it. And you don't need to pass the baton. We can keep it live at all times, even while we're doing the accounts. And it gets updated automatically. These are cloud-based software. These are subscription-based software packages. So you pay monthly and it gets all the updates as things change. So recently, in the last couple of years, we had Making Tax Digital coming in. If you had desktop software that you'd had since the year dot, then it wouldn't have been Making Tax Digital compliant. You would have had to upgrade that software to get it to be Making Tax Digital compliant. But if you had cloud-based software, as that software became compliant for Making Tax Digital, you would already have that. And that for me is great because things change all the time. Making Tax Digital is coming in through to self-assessment in the near future too. And these things are changing. HMRC are changing the way that they accept information. They're looking for digital links. They don't like ledger books because you can make too many mistakes if you're using your calculator and handwriting things in. They don't like spreadsheets for the same reason. It's too fraught with the ability to make mistakes. So they like software, and they like software that they can interact with and you can interact with them through it. So that's why cloud-based software has really taken off in the last couple of years. So what does in the cloud mean? It means it's a subscription model. It means it's real time. It means you've got access anywhere. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a good thing, but when I'm on my holidays, I've still got access to my software. If I'm on my holidays and I'm laid on my sunbed drinking my pina colada and I think, how much does X, Y, and Z person owe me? Or maybe they email me and say, oh, how much do I owe you? I can go into my software on my phone, on any device, because I can log in anywhere as long as there's the internet. And I can find out how much that person owes me. And then I can tell them how much they owe me there and then, and I'm more likely to get paid more quickly. And I like to be paid quickly. And I'm sure you do too. But it's not only that information, it's lots of information that's available to you, absolutely anywhere you are, as long as you've got internet connection on any device. And the security within that, it's all two-stage security. So on mine, I go in on my phone, I'll put my fingerprint on it, so not just anybody, only people with my finger can get into my phone, into that software. And then if I'm logging in from somewhere that I haven't logged in to that software before, it then sends a text as well. So I have to go in and use that text. It's also got security to check against non-people getting into the software as well. So you have to tick the boxes sometimes and say where there are traffic lights or hills or buses or whatever that might be on the screen. A little bit annoying at the time, but I'd rather be secure and take that extra 20 seconds that it takes to get in. So you always have the latest version and it's always backed up. So that cloud-based software and everything you do and put into it is constantly being backed up, and not only in one place, in several places. So these guys, software is their world. It's their only thing that they do. They've got one job to do, and that's keep that software safe for you. So they do keep it very safe, backing it up in different locations, often in different countries of the world. So why is it beneficial? Well, it's live, it's real time. Every time you go into it, that's the information. It's as up to date as you've made it. So if your bookkeeping is 6 months behind, then so is your software. So keep it up to date. That is always a good thing to do. You can access it anywhere. You've always got the latest version. It's backed up, and there are loads of time-saving features. And the time-saving features are often the thing that make people buy into the software. So just to recap, that's what we've just talked about in this section. I don't know whether there are any questions at this point in time, or whether you want to hold them over till the end.
Jo, I just have one. We're getting a bit of a tap from you. I don't know whether it's a
tap.
hand. It's like a little. I'm not sure if it's your mic, if it's touching your chin. Or
okay. No, it's not. It's definitely not touching my chin, but I've moved it a little bit further away from my face.
Great.
I can, if that continues, I can take off the headset and mic, and we can just go with the laptop sound. No, it's just I've got a couple of dogs, and they might get involved with something. That's all. So I'm just trying to hedge my bets on that one.
No. It sounds better already. Actually, fine.
Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to go really quickly through this section because I want to focus more on features and functionality rather than who these main players are. So there are lots of players in this marketplace, loads and loads of players. It's grown rapidly, especially with the uptake of Making Tax Digital. So there are lots of players out there. So who should you be looking at? Well, for me, I like to go with market leaders. I like to go with people who are tried and tested and have got millions of users, because they can't all be wrong, surely. So tier one is QuickBooks and Xero. So these guys are market leaders, and it's like it's a two-horse race, because Xero was the market leader, now it's QuickBooks, and who knows, Xero might take back over again at some point in the future. But these guys have got significant clear headspace in the number of users down to the tier two users. So that it's likely that they will continue to be the market leaders for quite a considerable amount of time. In tier two, really popular software too are the Sage products. So Sage used to be the market leader when we were looking at desktop products. It was Sage all the way. Sage 50 was the thing, and Sage Instant were the things that small businesses used. And they've brought in some cloud-based products. They were a little bit behind the curve in bringing in cloud things. So Xero were out of the traps quickly, and so were QuickBooks, and they left them behind. They've got products there. For me, they're not as good as QuickBooks and Xero, but they're all right. And Free Agent is free, always a good price, if you have a business bank account with Royal Bank of Scotland NatWest. So if you can get hold of software for free and your business is still really new and cash is phenomenally tight, then you might choose to go with Free Agent because it's free. It's a relatively simplistic product, but if your business is relatively small and simple, then it might be that it's right for you. But I would actually say that if you can, wherever possible, choose a piece of software today that is going to do for all of your tomorrows, because moving from one piece of software to another piece of software always comes with work. So to avoid that piece of work, changing pieces of software, and you getting frustrated because you knew where everything was in the old piece of software, but it didn't have the functionality you needed, try and find a piece of software that's going to do everything that you're going to need and that's going to be future-proofed. Use that from today and continue to use it. Lots of them have levels and tiers that you can subscribe to. So you can start off at a lower level and upgrade within the same piece of software without ever having to transfer. And that would be a much better strategy in my mind than choosing something that isn't going to future-proof you in your business. So tier 3, there are loads of players in here and some of them are free. And if something's free, you've got to ask who's funding it, because these products need developing. They need money to invest in developing them and keeping them at the forefront of everything that we need. Keep putting in new features and functions. Make sure that there is everything that you need. Give you a well-supported help desk so that if you've got any questions or queries, you can ask them. How are they getting that money if it's a free product? Ask yourself that, and therefore whether or not that might be the product for you. With Free Agent, they're getting funded by RBS NatWest. Therefore, although it's a free product, it's in tier 2, they've got lots of subscribers, and they do have some funding there, but not as much as these guys who are actually charging for a subscription. So QuickBooks, I'm going to go really quickly over these slides because I really do want to get on to the features and functions. But if you have a copy of the slides afterwards, you'll be able to see this information. So it was started a long time ago. It's backed by a really big American company who are cash rich. Therefore, they can invest and support the development of this business. You'll see how much money they've got by how often they're on the telly, because that is not a cheap thing to do. They have moved on a lot from the early days when it used to be called Quicken, and they have a worldwide presence. They are the worldwide market leader in cloud-based accounting software, and they are also the UK market leader in online accounting software. Xero, they're also really large, and originally came into the marketplace 2008, have grown massively since then. They were the market leader in the UK. They do have a worldwide presence, but not as much as QuickBooks, but who cares? You know, we don't care about the worldwide presence. We want to know what they're doing in the UK, right? They were the UK market leader until last year. It's also a very good product. Sage Business Cloud, like I say, Sage were the market leader for the desktop product. They brought in their Business Cloud product. It's a bit snaggy for me. It's all right, but it's not in the same league as Xero and QuickBooks. Free Agent is pretty simplistic, so it's not got a huge amount of users on the platform. It was purchased for 53 million. Arguably, the likes of QuickBooks spend more than that every year just on their adverts on the telly. So it is a much smaller product. It's not a bad product. It is just relatively simplistic and doesn't have the level of features and functions that the likes of Xero and QuickBooks have. So who do you choose? Find out what you need. Don't buy into something that's got a load of things that you don't need, but equally buy into something that has everything that you're going to need for today and also for your future. So think about where you're going in your business and what you might need as you go forward, and make sure that the piece of software that you choose is going to future-proof that decision that you make today. But also make it cost effective. You know, it's your money. You can only spend it once. So make sure that it's future-proof. Easy for you to say, future-proof and stable, but also cost-effective. So the 5 reasons that business owners choose software are: number 1, because they feel that they have to because of making tax digital, because it's easy to use, and they all say that they're easy to use, but you know, you'll be the judge of that. Automation, because they want to save time. Cash flow, helping you to get paid faster. And the cost. They're the things that people are telling me they use to choose which piece of software they choose. So let's have a look at those sections. So making tax digital is a legal requirement. It was brought in 2019 with a soft landing ending in April 2020. If you're VAT registered, then you need to supply your VAT information now using Making Tax Digital compliant software. But there are also time savings involved in doing that if you do it directly from your software, because a lot of software prior to Making Tax Digital and a lot of mechanisms people did for their VAT prior to Making Tax Digital meant that they had to do it in one thing, maybe a spreadsheet, whatever it might be, and then they had to log on to HMRC's VAT software as well, and then populate the information into there. If you can just do it in one place, everything in one place, and then go through and tick the button that says, yeah, I want to submit it, click and submit it, isn't that easier? Saves you a bit of time and saves a lot of errors. Then that's why Making Tax Digital was brought in to save errors. So ease of use, they all say they're easy. Most of them will offer you a free trial. So you can go in and have a look at the functionality that is in there and how easy you find it to use. All very well and good somebody else saying, oh, this is really easy to use, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But how do you feel about it? It's your business, it's your spending decision. You need to decide what you're going to find easy to use. One thing I would say is they do offer a free trial, but if you're given a piece of software, it doesn't make you into a bookkeeper just because you've got that software, in the same way as you don't get a six-pack just by subscribing to the gym. Some work will be required. So you're probably not going to want a free trial in 6 different pieces of software to work out which the easiest one is to use. For certain, I don't know whether Xero offer something like this or any other pieces of software, but QuickBooks offer free what they call SMB training, which is a 3-hour introduction to QuickBooks software. You can log into QuickBooks homepage and register for one of these training sessions online. They run pretty much every week and they're free of charge, and you can have a 3-hour introduction into the software to show you how to do a lot of the basic functionality within there. If you're given some instruction on how to use it, you're going to be able to use it a lot easier. When I go into the different pieces of software later, I'll be able to show you what their help functionality is like. But help functionality is a really important thing for you when you're starting to use a piece of software. So automation is a really important thing because it's going to save you time. So if a piece of software is going to cost you upwards of £30 a month, and some of them do, unless you go in through your accountant, you can often get discounts there. Sometimes they'll offer you an introductory offer. They start as low as, I don't know, £6, £10 a month, and then the full all singing, all dancing level could perhaps be £30. I think Xero might be a little bit more if you then link your bank accounts to it as well. So you're going to want to save some time, because your time is money, and if you can counteract a cost through your bank account with time saving, you can then use that time to go off and earn more money. So how do you save time? Doing things like linking your bank accounts, that saves time, because if you don't have to key the information of what's been paid and who it's been paid, why, and the dates and all that kind of thing, that data all comes through automatically with bank links, so that saves you time. There are receipt processing functionalities within the software that mean that you don't have to key your bills and expenses. It can take a snap of them on your phone, or you can forward it via email, and all of that is then picked up using artificial intelligence so that you don't have to do the keying. That'll save you time. Integration with other software. We have got a client who integrates with their e-commerce software, and they take 400-500 orders in any particular month, saves the keying of all of those orders into their bookkeeping software if the software integrates with their e-commerce platform. And for them, QuickBooks did that. That was a huge saving for them. It was saved them one person a day a week that they were keying by that integration alone. So if you're using another key to your business piece of software that has information, perhaps sales, or it's an estimating, I mean, you can estimate using these pieces of software, but some estimates are really sophisticated, and you might have an industry specific piece of software. check which software then it integrates with, because that might be the key to the decision making. Importing data. So if your other piece of software that's really key to you is really important and it's detailed and there's lots of it, it might be that an importing functionality is really important to you. So importing of data might be functionality that is key and definitely saves you time, because if you're having to import, I don't know, thousands of sales through Amazon or eBay or whatever, and you don't have a direct link, then downloading a CSV file and importing it into the software is a really quick way then of getting to that information and having it in your software. Software that has a direct link to HMRC will save you from coming out of one system and going into another, so that will save you time. And having the opportunity for it to be on any device anywhere will also save you time, because you're not then having to say to somebody back in the office, can you just have a look on the system for this X, Y, and Z? You've got it with you at all times. So these are all ways that it can save you time. So linking your bank account, yeah, I'm going to go through these really quickly so that you get to see much more of the functionality. So just check that the link is stable with your bank. Not all banks have set up with open banking. The banking sector were asked to provide information in a more stable way to software providers for you so that it helps you. Some of them did it, some of them did it but didn't do it very well. So check that your bank will link to that piece of software in a stable way, and also check whether there's an extra charge to do that, because it is a really good thing to do. I would highly recommend that you do it. Some of the platforms charge additionally to link bank accounts and others don't. You can also link things like credit cards. You know, if you've got a specific credit card for your business, you can link those through too. And you know, through QuickBooks software, you can link as many accounts as you need. It can get confusing if you link a lot, but if you've got a lot, it's the best thing to do to link them all. So you save time by linking your bank accounts, by not having to process the details transactions from your bank statements. And you can also set up bank rules. So there are things that you will have coming through your bank that come through every month, sometimes every week. And you can set up rules that say, when you see the word bank charges, just process that through as an expense through into my software as a bank charge, or always process things that come through iZettle as sales, or always process my director's loans to the director's loan account. And rather than having to do that every time, it will do it for you. It will say, it's a bit like an ATIF formula if anybody is a super user on Excel. If this is true, then do that. That's what a rule does. So it saves your time in an interaction with the software. You can do online bank reconciliations. You don't have to kill several highlighters by going through a hard copy bank statement anymore. It can do it all online. Artificial intelligence will recognize transactions. So if you've got an amount of money coming through the bank and it's the same as the amount of money that you've raised on an invoice, it will match those two transactions and say to you, is this payment of this invoice? And if it is, you can just click yes, match that off, and it will mark it off as paid. That's a really good piece of functionality that lots of pieces of software have. And it keeps it up to date. So you're not waiting for a bank statement. They update overnight, and they generally have a button that you can just press to refresh and bring anything that would come through on your online banking on your phone would come through into your software at the time that you refresh it. Processing receipts. I get really excited about this because in the days that I were in industry, the companies that I used to work for, big companies with lots of money, were spending millions of pounds to have soft copies of receipts, bills and receipts in the software, so that anyone who interrogated the software, if they wanted to see the original bill or receipt, they could see it as an image on the screen. And this was something that they spent lots and lots of money in getting, and we get it as part of the software. So lots of pieces of software, QuickBooks included, has got snap technology within it. So you can take an image on your phone. It doesn't sit on your phone camera deck. It just then takes that image and sends it through to through into QuickBooks. Or you can forward emails on. You don't have to keep hard copies. You don't have to print things that have been emailed through from you. So we save some trees, which is another additional benefit. Or if the software that you've subscribed to doesn't have that functionality, there are specific apps that specialize in this called Receipt Bank and Auto Entry. I think there are another couple of players as well out in the marketplace. They are subscription softwares in their own right, so they might cost you £10 a month. But again, they allow you to do the same thing. You can scan, forward emails, or take images and forward them into the software, at which point artificial intelligence will pick up the key details from that receipt and allow you to check that before you process it through into your software, saving a lot of time in keying. Also means a lot of receipts that previously were being lost are now not being lost. So some people are really good at keeping records, keeping their receipts, filing them. Some people are just not. And if you are one of those people who isn't, if you can, every time you touch a receipt, immediately forward it via email if it's come as an email receipt, or take a snap on your phone of it and put it straight into your software, you are much more likely to not lose those receipts and be able to claim more tax deductible expenses against your business, which will save you tax. The other thing about these receipt processing software is it's great evidence for HMRC. If you had a VAT visitation a couple of years ago and you had your wonderfully filed and referenced box files or lever arch files, then it might take half a day to a day to have a VAT inspection, because they'll say, right, show me this one. You're across to the thing, you find the file, you're going through the file, you find the receipt, there it is, they go through, yes, happy with that. Now you can just go into your computer, they go, right, I want to see that one from that VAT return. You double click into it, drill down, and there's the receipt. So it'll be a much quicker investigation, and you get HMRC out from your hair much quicker, which is brilliant. So integration with other software, there are built-in integrations, and there are lots of these, and you can research those. These software providers are really keen on getting integrations. Some of them are built in and some of them are separate apps, and some of those separate apps are free of charge and some of them are chargeable. So do your research, have a look what's out there, check the reviews, make sure that it's stable, and get whatever it is that is right for your business. Importing data can be really good if you start with cloud software for the first time. So if you've had spreadsheets previously and you've got all your spreadsheets, all your records are in there, you can recreate those by importing them into your cloud-based software using import functionality, which is really good. It's also really good if apps won't integrate, and you can import multiple transactions as a batch, so that can save time too. Direct link to HMRC saves you from logging into another piece of software to file your VAT returns. So this is a good thing. And we will be submitting self-assessments using our software at some point in the future too. That comes in for Making Tax Digital in April 2022, which will be upon us quicker than the blink of an eye. So it would be good to get software now so that you are ready for that when it comes in. So you can use it on any device as long as you have got an internet connection. So as a recap, there are lots of software providers, and you should choose the software provider based on your need in your business. So check them out, look what they provide, what the cost that they're charging is, any integrations, anything that you might need to make your life easier. Don't just do it on cost, check the functionality to choose a particular piece of software. Do we have any questions at this point? No questions at that point, then I will continue. So the next thing that I'm going to do is do a whistle-stop tour over features and functions, because there are loads and loads of these. So I can't talk about them all. There will be features and functions that are very industry specific that might be key to your business, but today I've only got the time to talk about the main ones. So these are the ones that I'm going to talk about. So look and feel is something that is a feature and a function. Most of these pieces of software will have something called a dashboard, which is an initial page when you log into it that gives you a snapshot of where your business is. It might tell you how much your bank account's got in and how many of those transactions have been processed through your software. It might tell you how much your sales were in the last month, year, whatever that might be, any outstanding or overdue invoices that need to be paid, that kind of thing. It will have typically drop-down menus so that it's intuitive and easy for you to use, and drill into fields. So when you're looking at a summary or a report, if there's something in there and you're wondering what's happening with that particular number in that particular field, you can drill into it and go into the transactions that make that up, and then drill further into that and see the source document that goes behind that field. So that is something that I find really, really useful. These pieces of software generally are really forgiving. You can edit things if you do them wrong. So if you go in and you choose the wrong VAT and then VAT rate, and then you come to do your VAT at the end of the quarter, you can go back and edit that if it's in bills and expenses. Obviously, you need to be careful of choosing the wrong VAT rate if you're VAT registered and you're raising invoices. Typically, if you're VAT registered, it's 20%. That's what you raise all of your invoices at. Obviously, we've got for certain sectors the reduced rate 5% at the moment, and there are other certain goods and services that might be reduced or zero rated. But once you've raised an invoice and sent it to somebody else, it's not that easy to change it, because you've given it to somebody else and their liability to you to pay you is based on that. But if it's something that's internal within your software and you make a mistake within it, if you've coded it to the wrong expense, if you've keyed the wrong amount and then it comes through the bank, you can't understand why it won't reconcile, and it's because you've keyed the wrong amount, then it's pretty forgiving and you can edit those fields. Making tax digital. So if you're VAT registered, you're going to need to have this filing directly through your software. For some people, you're going to need something called bridging software. Lots of cloud accounting software has bridging capability within it, and that's if you're on some wacky kind of VAT scheme. So like there's something called the tour operators margin scheme, there's partial exemptions. These things, no software will allow you to just click a button and file those. They are really quite complicated VAT schemes. So you wouldn't always be able to file directly from the software, but bridging software is built into some of these softwares. So the capability to deal with the flat rate and cash schemes, which are much more used, they're much more frequently used, and lots of software has that functionality built in that you can just tick a button and say you're using the flat rate or the cash scheme. So you would need that functionality if that was what you were using. And also EC sales. So if you're trading within the EC, if you're selling goods and services within the EC, you would need to produce something called an EC sales list. And does the piece of software that you're looking at allow you to produce an EC sales list from the software? Because that obviously would be really important to you if that was a situation that you were in. So bank feeds, check if your bank's supported and whether there's an additional charge. Also check if you've got multiple bank accounts, if it supports multiple bank accounts. You can import data if required, and this sometimes is at the time that you initially link your bank account. It'll only go back so far. So if you want to start using software and link your bank account and it only goes back a year, but you want to go back 2 or 3 years with your transactions, you may need to import that bank data. And again, that can be done using a CSV import file. The automation that you get from linking your bank will save you lots of time. So it is definitely something that you should look at. Getting started tools. Lots of software will have a migration team that will be there to encourage you to move from another piece of software, and they will then do that for you, often free of charge, only with main pieces of software. So if you've chosen initially to use one of the free guys in the tier 3 providers, typically they wouldn't be supported by a migration team. But if you are moving, I don't know, from Sage to QuickBooks, then there's a good chance that that move would be supported by QuickBooks to allow you to do that more easily. If it isn't, if you can download the data onto CSV or spreadsheet files, then you can import that into most of the software. And if you've been using spreadsheets, then that's already in a spreadsheet format. You would just need to create the upload file format correctly and then put that into the software. So there are import tools available, but if there aren't, then you can do import functionality from spreadsheets to CSV files. Receipt management. So this is, for me, one of the most exciting things about cloud-based software, the fact that you can just snap and sort your receipts. They talk about this on the adverts on the telly because it is something that people hate doing. They end up with a carrier bag or whatever full of receipts. They've lost loads of them, and they then sit on a Sunday afternoon when they would much rather be watching something on the telly or spending time with their families or off playing golf or whatever, but they can't because they've got the VAT quarter coming up, and suddenly they've got these pile of receipts to deal with. If you're dealing with those on a daily basis, when they come in and it's a 2-second job, isn't that more preferable? You then would go into your software periodically and check and push those receipts through into your software. It's much quicker than doing it the old manual way. Believe me, it really is. And it means that you're not going to have lost a load of those receipts along the way. So check whether or not there is an inbuilt capability. And if there isn't, have a look at those apps that you can use. Receipt Bank and Auto Entry are very, very good. Raising invoices. So this is your sales. Get a piece of software that will allow you to personalize your invoices and estimates and quotes if that's something that you do, and that there's an easy conversion from an estimate or quote into an invoice format so that you can do that really quickly. QuickBooks with estimates will allow you to raise an estimate through your app on your phone while you're with a customer. So if you're doing, I don't know, fitting kitchens, but doing something where the customer will be with you at the time that you potentially would raise an invoice, you can do that on your phone through your mobile app. And actually you can get your customer to use your phone screen and sign onto the phone screen their signature to say that they've accepted that estimate, and then that's really good proof and evidence later on when you come to raise the invoice. So that's really good functionality if that's something that's useful to you. Sales receipts are a form of invoice that is raised if you take cash over the counter or from an e-commerce site. You wouldn't raise invoices at that point, you'd raise sales receipts, which are invoices that have already been paid, basically. And tracking the progress of an invoice. So, for example, if you raised an invoice in your software and you emailed it, is there an audit trail that tells you the date and time that you emailed it? Is there an audit trail that tells you the date and time that your customer then opened, viewed and read that email and looked at that invoice? Because that's really good. If they were to then say that they hadn't received it, you know that they did, and you've got a log that says actually this was the date and the time that they opened that invoice and viewed it. So it helps you to chase then overdue invoices if you've got all of that information at your fingertips, then, and you've linked your bank and you've logged all those payments that you've received. You can raise statements. That's another great way of getting paid faster. But also there are functionalities within the software, within lots of the software, that allow you to integrate directly with things like PayPal or Go Cardless. and allow you to take direct debit payment for invoices. If you've got a business that does reoccurring invoices, that's a really good thing to do, to take payment via direct debit. And if somebody is an unknown quantity and you don't want to end up with a bad debt, you might actually raise an invoice that needs paying up front. You might decide that on that particular invoice you'll accept payment via PayPal. Obviously, charges are applied by PayPal for those kinds of things. But if somebody receives an invoice with a pay now function, they are statistically more likely to pay now. So if what you need is your money in quickly, then these are really good things to have within your software and give you the option of doing that. Projects. Okay, projects are really good if you are like doing kitchens, for example, or you're a builder, or you've got more meaty pieces of work that you might have lots of bills and expenses associated directly with it. You might raise a few invoices associated with it, and it's really good to track how profitable each individual project was. So within the projects functionality, and a few of these pieces of software, Xero and QuickBooks certainly have this functionality within them, you can then look at the profit that you've made by an individual piece of work, which could be really important for you to understand where you make money and where you don't, and which particular projects you made money on in any particular year, so that you can learn from that and ensure that you make money on all the work that you do going forward. So projects is a feature or function that you may find really useful, and if you do, check that your software has it within it. Reporting. Some pieces of software have relatively basic reporting, some have really sophisticated reporting. How important is reporting to you? Have a look at what the sets of reports are that are available that are standard, and how customizable those reports are. Customizable means that you can go into them, you can choose from drop downs. Typically, I want that to be for this year to date, always this year to date, regardless of where I am in the year. I want it to be monthly. I want it to be on either the cash or the accruals basis. I want it to have these things in and not these things in it. And then once you've decided on the format of that report, you can save it, give it a name, and every time you want to run it, you just click on that report, and it's a one click rather than going through that whole process of deriving that report format that you're looking for the next time. You can have favorites, so they come to the top of your report list, because the reports list can be very long in some of these pieces of software. So you can create favorites, and you can customize reports that are useful to you, so that you've got the management information that you want to run your business and make good business decisions. Cash flow is really important, and it's never been more important than right now, because we are in unprecedented times, and lots of people who may have had cash reserves previously don't have them now. So how long will our cash last? That is a really important question to ask ourselves, and especially if all of a sudden our route to making money has been stopped by another lockdown. So looking at cash flow and having the ability to have cash flow reports that not only look historically, but allow you to project into the future what your cash is going to look like in a week, in a month, in 3 months' time, is really, really important. So if that is important to you, if cash is one of your key indicators, is something that is a big stress point for you potentially in your business, then looking for a piece of software that has cash flow functionality built within it is really important. There are separate apps, separate pieces of software that will help you to project your cash flow. Typically, they are further subscriptions, so there's additional charges that are applied to them. So if your software doesn't have it in it, you can go out then and find another piece of software that will give you what you need. But for me, if you've got everything in one place, then that is the ideal situation. Stock management. So you may or may not have stock. If you've got things that you buy to sell, you will probably want to check your stock levels on that. And that's what stock management is. So inbuilt functionality sits within most of the pieces of software, but not always at the basic level. And that's the same with some of these other pieces of functionality as well. You may need to upgrade to higher levels of functionality to get stock management or some of the other things that we've discussed. So stock management means that when you buy stock items, you can declare it as the purchase of stock items and it'll add it to your stock when you process that bill. And when you sell things, you can tell it that you've sold X, Y, and Z items of stock, and it will adjust that on your stock as well. You can do stock takes and adjust the stock level for any stock wastage. And in QuickBooks, certainly, in your money bar at the top of your stock screen, then you would have anything that was short stock or you were out of stock in. So you would know not to take an order for something that you've run out of stock on. The other thing that you get within stock management, I mean, you can purchase further apps to integrate to do this in a much more sophisticated way. So if you were manufacturing and you needed bills and materials, etc., then typically you'd need an integration of a further app to do that. But there are also products and services that you wouldn't necessarily associate with stock management, that stock management functionality can be really useful for. So, for example, I use products and services. I don't sell stock items, but I do have people who purchase the same services regularly. And I like to analyze my sales by the kind of activity that we're doing for our clients. So I might analyze on the times that we've done projections of cash flow for people, the bookkeeping, the payroll, the VAT returns, the end of year accounts. I might want to do an analysis that says, how is the shape of our business changing? And where are we spending our time? Where are we making money? And I can do that by allocating the things that we do to something called products and services. And then when I sell things, when I raise invoices, I raise them under those products and services, which allows me to then analyze those sales as those products and services later down the line. I find that really useful, and other people might do too. So multi-currency, another thing that either you're in or you're out. What I would just say, a word of caution, is that if you take, for example, the highest level of QuickBooks software and you can use multi-currency within it, within the settings, you would be asked whether you want to set multi-currency up, and only set it up if you're actually trading in multi-currency. You can go back and set it up later if suddenly you start dealing multinationally. Dealing in multi-currency is something you can't switch back off, because if you've got transactions which are in dollars or euros or whatever it might be that you've said that you've been trading in, then you need to have a conversion rate within that so that all your transactions are marked up correctly. So once you switch it on, you can't switch it back off. Therefore, only switch it on if you need it. The other thing is, only switch on functionality that you need to keep life simple, because why would you want loads of boxes opening up within your software asking if you want to populate them, and you don't, because you don't actually need that piece of software, that functionality at that time. So go back and switch it on when you actually do need it, would be my advice. Have a look at the features and functions, switch on the ones that you need, but only switch on the ones that you're actually going to use. Time tracking. So we sell time and knowledge. Lots of people sell time. If we go back to the builder, you know, they're spending a number of hours. They might have a number of fitters who are out fitting those kitchens for them. How long did it take them? That you might need that for payroll. You might also need it for billing. So how do you track that time? There is time tracking functionality built into a lot of these pieces of software. So your team could have an app on their phone that only doesn't mean that they get into your software. It means that they can just track their time. and then you can see the amount of time that they've spent on a job. You can allocate that into projects. You can use it then for payroll, or you can use it to raise invoices. It allows you in the background, even if you're not doing any of those things, it allows you to work out whether or not you've made money on a particular job or not. So built-in functionality is available in some softwares, not in other, and where it isn't available, there are third-party apps that integrate, that allow you to track time. Construction Industry Scheme. So CIS, that's what that stands for. It's something that you'll either be aware of because it's an industry that you're in, or you might not have ever heard of it because it's not an industry that you're in. But if you are a constructor or somebody who supports construction, which can even be cleaning on a construction site, then you must register for the Construction Industry Scheme. And the Construction Industry Scheme means that in most cases, deductions are made from invoices, a little bit like PAYE deductions of tax at source. There is a route then for offsetting that if you are a main contractor, raising invoices and deducting from invoices for people who raise invoices on you. It's a process that you have to go through, and some softwares have functionality built within them to allow you to raise your CIS statements and invoices through the software, and also do the monthly reconciliation of that so that you know how much you're paying over to HMRC. And some of them even allow you to make those to process those returns, those CIS returns directly through your software. So if you are in the construction industry and therefore caught by the construction industry schemes, then it's something that's worth looking at within the software before you make your choice. So apps, if you have a piece of business critical software, will it integrate with the piece of cloud-based accounting software that you are looking at using? Because if it does, then that's great. If it doesn't, what can you do to bridge the gap? Will it integrate? That's fantastic if it does. Do you need an app to bridge the gap? And you know, where would you find it? Because you really don't want to be. I don't like keying personally. I certainly don't want to be rekeying. So if you've got critical information in one piece of software and you want it to be in your accounting software, or need it to be in your accounting software too, then find a way of integrating that or an app to bridge that gap. Help. Help is really, really important. You really will get to a point where you go to try and do something and you have no idea how to do it. Or you've had a go at doing something and it hasn't done what you expected it to do. And you're going to need somebody to help you with that. So when you're choosing a piece of software, for me, it's really important to have a bit of training on that software, but also have somebody to help you when you get yourself into a pickle. So this is the tier 1 and 2 people that we discussed earlier and what they do as far as help. So QuickBooks have got UK-based help desk, so you can speak to somebody in the UK live about the issue that you're having, which is often the best way to do it, because you might not be able to articulate exactly what it is that you're having a problem with. So if you sent an email, then somebody's interpretation of that email might not be exactly what the problem is that you're wanting resolved. And then you're back and forth and it's all taking time and can be very frustrating. So having somebody to talk to is, for me, the best thing. Next best thing to that, and means that you can perhaps carry on working with something else while you're waiting for a reply, is the live chat. So live chat would mean that a chat box would pop up on your screen, you raise your question, and somebody will have to then reply to that question. So that's also quite a good thing to do, and you might be able to continue working while you're doing that. QuickBooks will tell you how long it's going to be before somebody will answer the phone or answer a live chat, so you might actually choose between the two of those based on the waiting times. And they also have lots of useful help and videos and articles and step-by-step instructions on how to do things on their website, which is really good. You can also email questions over, but for me, I find that really frustrating. And it's the reason why we use QuickBooks more than we use Xero. Xero is really good software, but their support is email support. And often that email doesn't get responded to until the next day. And for me, when I've got a question, I want it answering now, not in an hour, ideally, and definitely not the next day. So I do find that really frustrating. And also because it's the email support, you can sometimes have failed to articulate quite right the question that you've got, and somebody's interpretation of it then might not actually answer the question that you felt that you'd asked. So that can go back and forth. But they do have the useful help videos and articles on their website, and they really are very useful. So that might be a better route to get in a solution to your question rather than going down the email support route. Sage have a help desk and live chats and email and helpful articles and videos, and Free Agent have a help desk too and useful videos. So the two market leaders, for me, my choice for QuickBooks, it's a bit of a deal breaker for me that I want there to be a help desk and not just have the email support. But that is entirely up to you. Obviously, you might be able to use that functionality really quite well by using the helpful videos and articles. So to recap, what features and functions do you actually need? So I've just gone through like a dozen of the main features and functions that will be in most of the software, but not all, and sometimes higher levels of the subscription. So what do you actually need your software to do, and which software has that functionality? And are there any time-saving features that would be built into the software that you could then use? So do we have any questions at this point that anyone wants answering?
Yeah, can you hear me, Joe?
I can, yes.
It's Ken.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello, Ken.
question. Hello, Joe. Yeah, question. Right. You talked about multi-currency. I deal
Yes.
in euros and sterling.
Yep.
If is the software, is it connected to a daily exchange rate?
It is, yes. So QuickBooks uses I can't remember what it's called now, but they do use one that updates daily. But if that isn't the one that you want to use, you know, if you've got like a big transaction going through and that isn't the conversion that you got on that transaction, you can override it. So
All right,
it has a rate built in, but you can override the rate that's built in case that is significant for you as a transaction.
well, I mean, I also tour operator, so I use the marginal rule. So what you said earlier,
I feel your pain.
yeah, well, it's all right actually when you get a head around it. So
Yeah.
you said it's not a direct link to HMRC, right?
No,
So
you can't do it through that at the moment, unfortunately.
All right. So if you
So
take
what we do for that is we set up within the software a new VAT rate called TOMS.
yeah,
So whatever your TOMS rate is that you've worked out, which might be, I don't know, 18.32 or whatever it is for the period that you're doing, you can set that up as a TOMS rate. And then any TOMS transactions that you're putting through would come then on your VAT summary. You would have those listed at the things that go under that TOMS rate. And then you can do your submission based on that. So you can create a new VAT rate that identifies the TOMS transactions, and then when you do your sums behind the scenes that work out what your VAT liability is for that quarter, you can then use that detailed VAT report to help you to do that, but you can't currently submit it directly from the software.
okay, that's great. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
I have
got
a
any other
question.
questions?
Oh, sorry,
Cool.
I have a question, and I think my question's lost now. Um, so basically, oh my God, I've totally forgotten what the question is. It's to do with non-profit organization, and oh my God, why have I forgotten what the question is?
We have such a lot going on in our minds right now. It's understandable.
Which one would you say at first? I'm trying to get the question to come out. Which one out of QuickBooks or Xero would you say would be useful for an charity?
Well, you can certainly, like I say, I am more knowledgeable about QuickBooks, so I do apologise for that because I am
That's fine.
able to answer questions on QuickBooks more easily. When you set up your subscription, it will ask you what kind of structure your business is, and you can put in that you're a charity, and it will then steer you towards the kind of things that you need to do for a charity. I also happen to know, being one of the QuickBooks trainers, that they've got a piece of training specific for people who are doing bookkeeping for charities that will be coming out really soon. And it's like a 2 or 3 hour free to subscribe to webinar that's going to be run by the QuickBooks training team on how to set up and then use QuickBooks for charities. So I know that that's coming out soon. So you may want to hold off, look on their website for that, have a look on the QuickBooks website and watch that, and then see if that functionality seems like something that you could deal with, and then perhaps make your decision based on that. But you definitely can, when you set it up, it asks you what structure, so whether you're a limited company, sole trader, charity, etc. It will ask you that as you're setting up your subscription, and it then steers and opens up nominal accounts, etc., based on what it is that you say at that point.
And will it have like the PO system as well integrated? So like when you spoke about receipts, so when you take pictures of receipts of purchase orders that an employee has done, that will integrate into the software easily. Will it recognize the
there is a piece of, if you mean expenses, so you've got expenses. Yeah, there is. Now then, is it Receipt Bank or is it Auto Entry? I think it might be Auto Entry, but one of them is really good, and there are other apps that are really good for taking expenses. If you've got a lot of expenses that you've got in your organisation that people will be claiming, there's then it creates an online authorization for that, so that they load their receipts in, it comes to you for authorizing, and then you push it through into the software. So I would check those out. There are definitely apps that do that.
So with regards to that, do you need to have, so when you purchase a subscription, do you need to purchase licenses as well? Because it's like, for example, let's say you've got 10 employees and each is claiming, so do they need a separate license in order to claim the expense for the receipts, if that makes sense?
It would be, you would use a separate app if you wanted to process it all online. You would need to use a separate app to do that, and therefore you would need to check what the license was for that. Certainly within QuickBooks, if you purchase Simple Start, you get one user, but for the likes of time tracking, you could have 10 people on time tracking, they wouldn't be counted as users because they only have access to the time tracking. So it does vary within the software and the functionality that's within it. Sometimes it's unlimited users, sometimes it's limited, and just look at the devil's in the detail, look at what it is that you need and what the subscription says about that.
Okay. Another question, budgeting, because I'm using Sage 50 at the moment, and I'm able to import. So I'm able to input budgets. So in order for them to calculate variances at the financial year end. So how is it with QuickBooks? Can you do the same?
Yeah. So you can there's a budgeting functionality in QuickBooks as well. So you can process your budgets through, and it's got some like shortcut ways of putting that information. So you can say it's £1,000 a month, and then say I want that to be every month on that line. So yes, you can, and you can also often within charities, you've got money that's earmarked for certain things, and you can not only use projects to keep things separate, but you can also use, there's other things, there's tagging, there's locations, there's class that you can use to say, I want to analyse and make sure that all the spend for that particular fund is all identified within that fund, and then there's reports that you can run that separate that out, so that you can really do the reporting, because I know that there's lots of regulations on reporting within the charity sector, and there's lots of ways that you can cut the data within QuickBooks that allow you to do that. So I do know a lot of people who use QuickBooks for charities.
And another thing, coming back to what you were saying, you know, if you have like a CRM software, apparently, for example, Salesforce, because we're going to be using Salesforce soon, apparently you can integrate your donations with a cloud-based accounting software, for example, QuickBooks. So have you seen that before?
I haven't. There's such a lot of different platforms out there. I've seen integrations with lots of things, but I haven't seen one personally with Salesforce. But within my organisation, I typically wouldn't tend to see those things. It would be my accountants who would, and bookkeepers. But I would just inquire with that CRM software if they do have an integration. And if they don't have an integration, whether they have an export tool that will create a CSV file that you can then just import into the software.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Anybody else got any questions?
Sorry, Joe, I am Mina Heng, and I missed a bit of the beginning of your presentation when you were talking about all the different software, just because I was a bit late. I just wanted to sort of just make people aware of, I don't know whether you talked anything about sort of some free software that might be available.
I did.
As well. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine, because I use something that's called Wave Accounting. I don't know whether you.
Yes, I've heard of it. Yep.
Yeah. So I find it quite good to use, but obviously that doesn't link into HMRC. So that's why I was looking at something that might be available.
Yeah. What I was saying was that there are lots of free software providers out there, but the problem I find with them is, obviously free is a great price because, you know, money's tight right now, but they don't, where are they getting their funding from to invest in the product? So when something like Making Tax Digital comes along and there is a good bit of development work that is required to create that interface with HMRC, nobody's paying them for a subscription, so how can they afford to pay developers to then create that link? And that then has been a problem, that these guys have ended up being a bit left behind because nobody's paying them. So how are they being funded and invested in so that they can give you the functionality that you actually need? And that is the issue, unfortunately, with these pieces of free software that are out there, and there are many of them.
Yeah. As that's what I was sort of, trying to see whether there was anything that might be sort of suitable, or even bridging software that might be suitable.
Yeah. There is bridging software out there that is separate, and bridging software available within the likes of these, the main platform users. But so you can use bridging software, because during the soft landing, obviously you could still continue to key that in. But HMRC have moved away from the soft landing now. They did then, take a soft touch approach because of COVID. But, it's going to go that we are going to need to have platforms that do directly interface with HMRC. So the time to get those, I guess, is sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So are you sort of suggesting or advising that we look more at the sort of the paid software then?
Well, one that gives you the functionality that you need, and if that is software that's Making Tax Digital compliant, then typically they are paid softwares at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions that I can help with? Okay, let's move on to stability and security then. So one question that I do get asked quite regularly is, oh, the cloud, I don't trust the cloud, I'm not going into the cloud. And people don't realise that they are already using cloud platforms for all sorts of different things. People use online banking and then say that they won't use online accounting software, which I find fascinating, because if I was a hacker, I'd be much more interested in getting my hands on your money than I would be getting my hands on who you've raised invoices to in the last month. So as far as security is concerned, the software providers do use high-level encryption software. So they are looking for, and certainly I know QuickBooks have bank encryption parity as far as security is concerned. So it is secure. They do use this 2 and 3 level software login to make sure that it is safe. You have to give people access to your software, and obviously you need to be careful who you choose to give access to your software, because obviously then they have whatever access you've given them. But it isn't easy for hackers to get into the software. And the stability issues that you're likely to face are more likely to be from your internet provider than they are from the platform. I'm not going to say that these platforms never go down, because occasionally they do. Occasionally they'll freeze. Occasionally they'll be a bit snaggy during a day. It doesn't happen much. So they are pretty stable and they are pretty secure. This is what they hang their hats on. So they've got to make these platforms as stable and secure as they possibly can, because it's your data. They need to look after it. So that's all I was going to cover today. So what we've looked at is, well, what is cloud accounting and why should I be looking at it? Who are the main providers and how do I choose between them? What are the features and functions that I'm likely to find within the software, and which ones should I be wanting to use in my business? Don't switch them all on. My dad always used to say, my dad's a plumber, and my dad always used to say to me, when you're choosing a washing machine, choose one that does washing. You don't need one that weighs your washing or allows you to add a sock later, and it's functionality that just could break. And don't you just want something that just does the things that you just need it to do? So bear that in mind. Only switch on the features and functions that you need, because it's just going to clutter up the screens and make things look really complicated if you switch on all the features and functionality. But if there is something that you need, look into it and switch it on if it's available to you. Bear in mind that a lot of these software providers have tiers within their software, so you can upgrade within the software, and when you upgrade within software, you take your data with you. So if you're moving from another piece of software, you're going to need to do some form of export and import activity, and that is a bit tedious and it's not helping you build your business. But if you go into a piece of software and go into the lowest level of that software first, you will have the opportunity to upgrade later. So saving yourself hard-earned cash in the early days, but choosing a piece of software that will be future-proofed for your business so that you don't need to transfer between software providers. And choose one that's got a good record for stability and security, so that you know that your information is secure. So what are my 3 takeaways for this session today? I want you to think about which software you actually need, so that you can, and hopefully the information I've given you will help you to make that decision on what the right software for you is. I want you to do some research into the software providers that are going to give you the maximum value and all the features and functions that you need, including that future-proofed piece. And I'm going to ask you to expect to invest some time into learning how to use the software. Just by purchasing a subscription to the gym, you don't get a 6-pack. And by purchasing a subscription to any of these pieces of software, you will not, via osmosis, know inherently how to use them. So do a bit of training. If there's training available online that's free of charge, or if there are some how to do the basic things, videos and help topics available within the help section of these software, I would advise that you do that and expect to invest a bit of time in learning how to use the software before you get frustrated and want to just throw it out of the window. They're all pretty easy to use once you know how. Once you know how, it's easy. So just invest a little bit of time in learning how to use them. And that's all I plan to cover today.
Thank you so much, Jo. That was absolutely excellent. Unbelievable level of detail in that. If there's any more questions, please put them forward either by unmuting or coming through the chat. I'm also going to launch the poll, which I think some of you have been on the calls before, where we just ask you to give feedback of what you've learned today and how successful it was for you. But I'm sure Jo or even myself around actually accessing the full support for the Grow My SME will take your questions. So I'll launch the poll and then you can be thinking of that while you continue on with questions. There you go, people. And as I say, please do still come through with your questions.
I'm not seeing a poll on my screen. I hope everybody else is. Do I need to stop sharing? Is that?
Everybody else should probably see the poll.
Okay, that's all right then. That's all good.
I hope, because I don't know how to share the poll if it's not. Oh yes, I've got people answering, so it must be
good. Excellent. That's all good. All good.
Actually, I think the take-home bit for me, Jo, in all of that was the reference to the gym and the six-pack, and actually investing and understanding that you've got to give it the time, which I thought was excellent.
You do. You do. It's the same with everything. You know, you do have to invest a bit of time in learning how to use something that's new to you.
Yeah.
It's perhaps a bit emotive mentioning gyms right now when we've just gone into lockdown and they've closed them all, isn't it? Perhaps I ought to have used a different thing for that.
And just while we're just waiting on the end, please remember, everybody, there is additional support you can actually access through the programme. So do log in to the website and register if you want to engage with it. And for anybody that wants to leave, if you've finished the poll, thank you very much for your attendance, and I'm sure we'll keep you up to date with future ones. Oh, we've got a question. Oh no, just a thank you, Jo.
Thank you.